to gather light, to make things brighter, and to magnify that image so you make the faint things brighter or bigger. So the light comes in through the telescope. The light is bent by either a lens or a concave mirror, and it brings it to a focus. And that focus point, as you see in the on the right-hand side, where I have a piece of tracing paper over my little telescope, and you can actually see the image of the moon. So that's where the focus is of the telescope. And now we'll take a magnifier and we'll magnify that image. So magnification isn't the big thing. The aperture is what's the main thing. So this is a good illustration of what aperture does for you. So think of a telescope as a funnel, and the larger the funnel, the more light that you can bring into your eye. So the little illustration here that Obsession Telescope uses, you can see that there's an 8-inch telescope there that shows M13, and the image is just very faint. But as you get larger in the telescope, the image gets brighter, and it brings out more detail that's there in M13. So larger is better. So the larger the telescope to a certain point is better. Now, you also have to think about, where am I going to put that telescope? So you can get a telescope so large that it's going to be very difficult. So gathering more light increases the brightness and the resolution, so it's more detail. So now, magnification. So we use a special eyepiece or a special magnifier in their eyepieces. So you start with a low power eyepiece because you want to be able to get a wider field of view so you can find objects in the telescope. And then once you find the object and get it centered in the telescope, then you can increase your power so you can make things larger or see more detail. So on the little telescope that we have, the little Dobsonian that we showed the picture of the moon, if you use the two eyepieces that came with the telescope, we had a 25 millimeter eyepiece. And the way you calculate the magnification power of the telescope is the focal length of the telescope, which is the distance from the mirror or the lens to the focus point, which is the focal length. And then the focal length of the eyepiece, you divide the focal length of the telescope by the focal length of the eyepiece, and that gives you the power. So the little Dobsonian has a 900 millimeter focal length with a 25 millimeter eyepiece. It's 36 power. With a 10 millimeter eyepiece, it's 90 power. So the longer the focal length, the lower power. So if you're using your telescope, you want to start out with a larger number on your eyepiece and then go to the smaller numbers as you increase, as you want to enlarge the object. So power. Power's not always good. And it's more power is not always your best friend, because you narrow your field of view as you increase the power. The image gets dimmer because you're spreading the light out, and the image gets fuzzier. So you can see in this illustration here of the image of Saturn, you see the small image is lower power, and as you increase the power, you see the image gets larger, but as it gets larger, it gets fuzzier and less detail. If you're ever around a telescope or ever around a star party, when I have my telescope out and I'm looking at Saturn, I'm always using lower power because I like a small, very crisp image versus large and dim and fuzzy image. So you can put any eyepiece you want in a telescope, which increases the power. That's how they sell these little cheap telescopes. They tell you, here's a 60 millimeter telescope and it's 400 power. Well, 400 power is useless power. So usable power on a telescope they usually say the rule of thumb is 50 power per inch of if you go by inches, are 2 millimeters, or 2 power per millimeter. So you're looking at the little 4.5 inch, 225 power is the maximum. Probably never get there with that telescope. Okay, types of telescopes. There are 3 main types of telescopes. We have refractors, which most people think of as being a telescope. That's using lenses that collect the light and bring it into focus, or it's using lenses. So the light goes through the lenses and goes to the focal point. We have reflectors, which uses a concave mirror and a small diagonal mirror to bring the light to the outside of the tube. Or we have catadioptrics. So with a refractor, because of the way the lens is made, refractors are more expensive because there are 6 surfaces that have to be precisely ground and matched to get the light all to come to the focal point at the same place. So there you're paying a lot more money for the size telescope. So per inch, they're the most expensive eyepiece, or most expensive telescope, until you get to the catadioptric, which it's a little bit of both. Okay, reflecting telescopes, for your dollar, you'll get more telescope aperture for a reflector because it's easier to grind one mirror surface and get it corrected than it is on a refractor, where you're grinding and matching more surfaces. So most of the telescopes that you'll see around us using will be reflectors. Catadioptrics is using a combination of lenses and mirrors, and you're able to fold the focal length of the telescope over, so the telescope is shorter for the diameter mirror that you have. A lot of us have those, and they're really handy. Advantages: refractors are long, they're rather expensive, but they give you really nice images. Reflectors, you can get a lot more telescope for your money for a reflector. Catadioptrics are more expensive, but they're small, they're easier to store, and give you good images. Okay, mounts. You can have a really, really, really good telescope on a really sorry mount, and you have a really sorry telescope. Or you can have a really, really good mount, and you can have a sorry telescope on top of that mount, and you can have a pretty good telescope sometimes. So there's 2 main types of mounts. There's out-as width, which is with the horizontal horizon, you're going north 360 degrees around, and then you're going from the horizon to vertical, or the zenith, straight up. Or you have equatorials, that you have the polar axis that is pointing toward the north, and then you have the declination axis that rotates to get the angle. There's either one, you can get good or bad mounts. The main thing you want is a good, stable, sturdy mount, instead of a little shaky mount. So go for the mount, because it's very important that you have a stable telescope, or you're going to be very disappointed. Nowadays, we have Dobsonians, and for years, all we had was equatorial mounts. When I first started, everything was equatorial. You saw very few out-azimuth mounts, because everybody was building mounts that's the only mount we knew. Well, John Dobson, back in the 70s, he was a monk in one of the Eastern religions, and he was in a monastery, so he had no money, but he loved astronomy and he loved telescopes. and he loved to build telescopes. And the story goes, the first telescope he built, he actually ground the mirror out of the bottom of a bottle, a glass bottle. Well, Dobson, because he had no money, he would go scavenge he would go over the wall of the monastery and go out and scavenge for material to build telescopes out of. So he was taking anything he could find. To grind his mirror, he was going down to the shipyards and he was finding salvaged porthole glass, and he was grinding mirrors out of porthole glass and then silvering those mirrors. But he came up with a mount that has been coined after named after him, the Dobsonian mount. It's a modification to an out-azimuth mount. The original ones were made basically out of junk, and he came up with some really large telescopes, but it didn't take off real quick. Everybody was looking at it saying that thing will never work. It's not machined. It's not accurate. And then all of a sudden people started realizing, wait a minute, that's a big telescope he's got there. And that mount is really stable and it's really smooth. It doesn't have a drive on it, but all you have to do is push it when the image goes out of the telescope. You just push it or pull it just a little bit and bring the image back in the telescope. But you can make really, really big telescopes out of some really inexpensive material, and they work really great. It totally changed telescopes. So from the time that he introduced it till now, you see more Dobsonian telescopes than you do equatorial telescopes. It's totally changed telescopes over the years for amateurs. Now, I think I've covered everything. I'm going to turn this over to Richard, and he's going to take us through the rest of the program.
Okay, well, thank you, Ralph. So we've kind of talked about types of telescopes. That was alarming. And just a little bit about it. This isn't a how to buy a telescope workshop or that kind of thing. We've got other programs for that. But once you've decided to buy a telescope, and maybe once you get it in your living room,
well, then more expensive.
And so there are a whole lot of other considerations that you generally tend to not think about until it's all sitting there. Now what? And so that's what this next part is. It's kind of all of the stuff that happens behind the scenes that you need to be aware of and that you need to think about to help make your observing more enjoyable and safer for your equipment and so on. And so one of the first things that we'll tell people when they want to buy a telescope, don't go to Walmart, don't go to Target, don't go to Sam's Club or whatever. Don't buy a department store telescope. You're probably going to end up ordering this thing online, which is why you should come to star parties and whatnot so you can kind of get a feel for what's out there. Okay. Well, when you place your order, and of course nowadays with supply chain delays and everything, it may be a while between when you place your order and when you get your telescope, but you can go on the manufacturer's website and a lot of the vendors' websites and download the manual. Now, I know there are a lot of real, he-men out there who say, I don't need no stinking manual. You need the manual, okay? Read the manual and then read it again. Read it while it's being shipped to you so that you are familiar with what you're looking at. Another thing you might consider, if you haven't actually committed to a telescope yet, is download the manuals of several telescopes that you're considering, because that can give you a lot of insight into what it is that you're getting yourself into, okay? But the instruction manual is gold. It really is. You really should keep it handy and look at it. Once it arrives, you're going to find boxes, and it'll come in a big box, might come in 2 or 3 boxes. I bought one telescope, came in 5 boxes. And then you open up those boxes and there's more boxes. And then you open up those boxes and there's probably going to be a whole bunch of more little boxes in there. Save the boxes, okay? And save any of the packing material that comes with it, okay? Because you'll find a use for that. We'll get to that in a little bit. Take all the parts out, make sure everything's there. There's usually going to be a poster in there that says, if anything's missing, call this number, and they'll get you whatever's missing. And then set aside any idea that you're going to take this outside that night and start looking through it, okay? Because for one thing, it's going to be cloudy, because it always is. But you need to figure out how this thing goes together. You'll probably be amazed at how many pieces there are. And so in the comfort of your living room with all the lights on, nice and warm and snug, put it together. Put it together inside. Play with it. Twist the focuser. See how far it goes. Put eyepiece in. You won't be able to see anything, but just practice doing that. How many screws does it take to clamp it down? How does it move? Up, down, left, right? What kind of controls are on it? Move the focuser in and out. Get a feel for the focuser. And then take it apart again. See, we spent a lot of time talking about putting it together, but at some point you're going to be taking it apart. And when you start taking it apart, all of a sudden you're going to have to, oh, well, I got this piece and that bit and this piece of mount and this counterweight and this thing. Where are all of those things going to go when you're taking your telescope apart again? Rinse and repeat, okay? Don't be shy about doing that, okay? Practice it, because sure as the world, when you get outside to do it, you'll all of a sudden find that things are completely different. But if you have an idea of how everything goes together, it'll make things a lot less frustrating for you. And that's one of the big things. We want to try and keep the frustration level down, because it can get frustrating pretty quick. Even with some of us who've been doing this for a long time, and we get a new piece of gear and it's like, what? Why isn't this doing this? Why does? And once you get frustrated, it's all downhill from there. One of the biggest things that we find, and when we do our new telescope workshops, this is one of the first things that we address, is the finder scope. So your telescope's going to have the main body, the main tube, and then there'll be another smaller telescope attached to it. That's your finder scope. You've got to get the finder and the main telescope aligned. Now, this is one of those things that it's not necessarily intuitive. Now, once you understand it, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. But for people who have never done it before, it's not really intuitive. So during the day, can't emphasize enough, during the day, take your telescope outside and using the main telescope, find an object that's not moving, preferably as far away as you can. A cell phone tower, any kind of radio transmission tower is great. Now, where I live, I don't have access to those things, but I can look through and I can see the gable end of a house in a subdivision that's across the street and up the hill. And I'll use that, or a chimney or something like that will work fine. Center that in the main telescope tube, and then if you can, lock everything down so it doesn't move. Then you start fiddling with the finder scope. And the idea is you've already got something centered in the main scope. Adjust the screws. There's usually either 2 or 3 screws, depends on the style of the finder scope. A lot of them will have 2 screws and a spring that you don't mess with. Adjust those screws until the crosshair in the finder scope matches what you believed you saw in the main telescope. Then go back and look in the main telescope, because it will have moved a little bit. Line it back up, fine tune the finder scope. Line it back up, fine tune it. Once you've done this a couple of times, it'll become second nature. And unless you really bang things around, the finder scope will stay in pretty decent alignment. Generally speaking, the next time you use it, even if you take the finder scope off the telescope, when you put it back on, it'll still be pretty close, okay? Unless you've really banged it around, you'll be good to go. And now, whenever you use the finder, put the crosshairs on what you're looking at, it should be in the field of view of the main telescope. But you always start with the main scope, then you adjust the finder to the scope. It's not the other way around. Okay, so now it's first light time. The first time you use your new telescope to look at an object in the night sky, that's called first light. And that's always kind of an exciting time for all of us when we get new optics. We can't wait to get first light on it. And depending on how big a scope you bought, that's how many days or weeks it's going to be until it's not cloudy anymore. So you can actually have a first light. It's exciting. You get excited. Okay. Scope out your observing site. See what I did there? You can do this even when it's cloudy. Okay, so while you're waiting for the clouds to clear, go out in the evening, look around your property. Where are the trees? Where are the street lights? Where is the annoying neighbor light? Where is there a nice open spot? Where is there a relatively flat spot? Look at all of that stuff beforehand. Okay, figure where that stuff out is beforehand. And then take your telescope out during the day. Plenty of daylight. Because remember, you practiced putting this thing together in your living room when it's nice and light. You will find that all of us who've been doing this for a long time, when we're having a star party or something like that, we always get there at least an hour or more before sunset, because we want to set up in the light, because it's a whole lot easier to see what you're doing. Okay, so set it up in the daylight, check your finder alignment. Okay, and then relax and don't rush things. So here is a picture. In this picture is my 100 millimeter Skywatcher EvaStar refractor on a brand new my brand new EQM 35 Pro equatorial mount, my first equatorial mount ever. Okay. There are several things wrong with this picture. Okay. First off, my sight is pretty pathetic right there. Okay. Actually, 10 feet over to the right is a much better place for me to set this up. I'm looking through my crepe myrtles and I won't be able to see anything there. But there is another kind of big mistake there. Anybody see what's wrong with that? There's no counterweights on on the telescope. I was so excited to set it up, and mostly this was to take a picture to share with all my friends on Facebook. And the first friend that liked it happened to be Matt, who also pointed out it would be a really good idea if this thing had some counterweights on it. But that's the kind of thing that when you're excited, that you don't think about it. And it's a good thing that I didn't loosen the clutch on this thing, because it would have gone all over the place and probably not ended well for me. Relax, don't rush it, have the instructions close by. You've all been looking at the pictures on the box, unfortunately, thinking that's what you're going to see. We've all seen the Hubble images. We look in books and we go, wow, this is going to be the most amazing, fantastic thing ever. And the universe has been here a long time. It's not going anywhere. Okay. Find and appreciate a few small, easy targets. If the moon is up, that's just naturally where you're going to gravitate to. Look at the moon. Maybe if you know where Jupiter or Saturn are, take a look at those. Just take a look at some actual stars, just so you can practice focusing. Don't try to see everything in one night. That will lead to a lot of frustration, because quite frankly, you haven't practiced enough to understand how your telescope works to find the things that you need to find. That comes with time and with practice. Okay. We get in this to have a good time. Okay. if you're getting into this to get your blood pressure up and to get frustrated and to learn all kinds of new interesting vocabulary, that's what astrophotography is for. Okay? And that's a whole nother thing. That's what you do that for. This is for relaxation, for appreciation. And then get on Groups.io, get on the Facebook page, share your experience. Okay. The members of the club want to know. Write up, even if it's just a couple of paragraphs, just type up I got my new Skymaster XYZ, and I had it out and I looked at the moon and it was an amazing experience, and send it to the newsletter editor and get it in the newsletter. Okay. I can guarantee you the newsletter editor is begging for stuff like that. Include a picture, take a picture of your new telescope, send it to the newsletter editor, because that way it gets shared with everybody. And you never know, somebody will say, oh, I had that model one time and you can do this and this and this. And next thing you know, you're making connections. Okay. One of the great things about our society is the way that we all support each other. And that's a pretty awesome thing. It's an awful lot of fun to be observing all by yourself, but it's also a lot of fun to share with your friends and family. Okay, so now it's time to buy accessories. You get this scope, and then you start looking, and you start seeing, ooh, what's David got over there? Ooh, Kevin, that's a neat little doodad you got going on there. Don't start buying telescope accessories. Use what came with your scope first. Get used to that. It's going to come with some eyepieces. They're not going to be TeleVue super fantastic, amazing eyepieces, but generally they're not bad. Okay, as long as you didn't buy a department store telescope, the eyepieces that came with it will work. And get used to using those. Get used to using the finding system, whether it's a red dot or an optical finder. But don't run out right away and start stocking up on stuff, because this is a slippery slope. And next thing you know, you're going to have 1,000 doodads and not have a clue what they do. You need to figure out what you really need to in order to do what you want to do. But there are some astronomy accessories that you do want to think about getting. Okay. A red light. Okay. You got to have red lights, and it doesn't have to be fancy, but be careful that it's not too bright. Okay. Because you're going to be shining this accidentally in people's eyes. This might actually be a little bright. Although I have found it's not too bad when I'm doing things, but I might take a little piece of tape and put over that just to tone it down a bit. Here, Ralph's got a nice little pencil light here. That's a very good, not very bright. You just need it to be able to see your controls and be able to see your star charts. Speaking of which, okay, you need Sky Atlas. I'm gonna pull this over here. And a great place to start, everybody has their own preference, but the Sky and Telescope Pocket Sky Atlas, look at that. It go in your pocket. Sorta. Then they have another one called the Jumbo Pocket Sky Atlas that is like 4 times the size of this, and it will not go in your pocket. This is the kind of thing that I just sit down and I just look at it. I can just stare at this. When it's cloudy, I'll just pull this out and start trying to see where things are. Pro tip, McKay's used bookstore. Okay, they have a astronomy department. You can pick one of these up. They cost about $20 new, but you can pick one of these up for less than $10. It doesn't have to be the absolute latest version, because it's not like the stars have moved that much. Okay, get you a Sky Atlas. Insect repellent. Okay, in the summertime, nothing sucks it out of you more than having their blood sucked out of you and having the bugs. You can use sprays and DEET and stuff like that. If you do, that's fine, but don't spray it around where your telescope is. Go off somewhere off to the side and DEET yourself up and then come back. Okay, you don't want any aerosols, especially with the kinds of chemicals that these bug repellents have in them, landing on your optics. One of the things that I have found is really good, and I know that several other club members have them. They've changed the design a little bit since this one. This one's kind of old, but it's called a thermocell. It's a little fancy. It's got a little butane cartridge that goes in here and a little pad, and you push the button on it, and it fires up a little flame, heats up the pad, and it creates about a 15-foot radius. As long as the wind's not blowing, these things are really good. You can't smell it. I don't smell it anyway. I use these for camping, just enjoying time out on the deck, and for stargazing in the summertime during bug season. These things are great. They're a little pricey, but they do a really good job. So that's something to think about. Small folding table and a camp chair. Comfort. Okay, you're going to want to sit down. You want to make sure you have a place where you can just sit down, flip through your atlas, turn your red light on, flip through your atlas, maybe decide on what you want to look at next. If you got a little folding table, you can have a place to write things down. You can have a place to sketch. You have a place to put all your stuff, okay? And it just makes all the difference in the world. Now, this last one is going to be like, what? Knee pads. It only took me 10 years to figure this out, but $5 at Walmart. Fisker's foam knee pads. Put those on your knees, because you will be down on your hands and knees on the ground, and you'll thank me for this idea right here. I love these things because, for one, my knees aren't getting any younger, but if you're set up, we're set up at Cloudland or Harrison Bay in a parking lot, much rather kneel down on that in these, with these on, than with just my pants. You're out in the grass, well, keeps your knees from getting wet and cold and miserable, okay? Yeah, they might look a little dorky, but man, once you've tried it, they are amazingly useful things. Now, you got all this nice telescope. You got all that. You're starting to accumulate gadgets. What do you do with this stuff? Well, some telescopes will come with a case. All right. If you shell out the money for a refractor, triplet apochromat, it will come in a really nice case with room for other things in there, because you know the thing set you back $3,000. They can afford to throw in a $150 case. Most telescopes won't come with cases. If you have a big Dob, if you buy a 6-inch Dob or an 8-inch Dob or a 10-inch or 12-inch solid tube Dob, been there, done that. Well, they don't even make a case for that. Okay, there's no way you have a case for that. You got to figure out, okay, let's see. Ooh, we bought a mattress and it had a big plastic bag over it. Goes great over a 10 or 12-inch Dobsonian in your garage. Take you a shower cap, plastic shower cap. Okay, the next time you stay at a hotel, you see one of those in the bathroom, you might not use it, but you got a use for it now. Put it on the mirror, keep the spiders out. Well, deter the spiders. Spiders and ladybugs will find a way, but you want to make it as hard as possible for them. Is this your C11?
That was
9 1/4. Okay, so this is Ralph's Celestron. It's a catadioptric scope, 9-inch mirror. This is an absolutely wonderful, lovely telescope. Didn't come with a case, so You make a case for it. You find a bin that will fit it, and you fit it up with pieces of foam. Now, I said a little earlier, save the packing that comes with your telescope. A lot of places are now using this stuff, this closed cell foam. I was talking to Ralph about this the other day, and this is what this is. And it's like, yeah, I can't throw this stuff away. I cannot bring myself to, and it's starting to accumulate in my garage, but oh, what you can do with this. And it's really got just the right amount of cushion. What the manufacturer probably mailed your telescope in, shipped your telescope in, and they're not interested in you receiving it in pieces. And everybody knows about how these companies are. They don't read what it says on the side about fragile and whatever. Save this stuff. Figure out how you can put it in here to fit your telescope. So several years ago, I invested in a solar telescope, a Lunt hydrogen alpha solar telescope. Did not come with a case. You'd have thought for as much money as that was. But it did come with this wonderful foam already cut out. There's another piece just like it. I took this piece of foam down to Home Depot, went to the toolbox department, and started pulling toolboxes off the shelf, open them up, setting the foam in there. Found me a Husky toolbox, 20 bucks. And there it is. It fits in there perfectly. Plenty of protection. That's the original foam that came in the packing. Here's the other piece of foam that came in the packing. Plus, I got this nice little tray for accessories. Toolboxes are wonderful, wonderful things to look at when you're looking for a case for your telescope. My 6-inch Dob is not on a Dobsonian mount anymore. I've put rings on it. I just measured it, got on Amazon, found a duffel bag that long, just a gym bag. Moving blanket or just any kind of blanket to go around it, sorted. It's in a case now. Works fine. Okay, so you get your telescope figured out. Now you need to think about your optics. Eyepieces, filters, finder scopes, all of these things require an extra level of protection. Your eyepieces may have come in a little plastic tube. That's great, but you need to have something to sort it out. This is where a place like Harbor Freight can be your friend. Okay, Harbor Freight, well, known for all of its super high quality tools, but you can buy these little boxes and they are not very expensive. And this little one is currently not being used, but there's some of that closed cell foam that I salvaged, put eyepieces in. This is my main box that I use now. Okay, that's this one right here. These will go on sale for $20, $25. Sometimes they'll have the plucked foam in them. I don't like plucked foam. I much prefer to use these to cut out the holes and put things in, and I can get a finder scope and a red dot. All my major eyepieces, Barlows, all my filters, laser, collimator, and it's protected. And it's not a lot of money. It's not a lot of money. Label it. Okay, this is just a silver Sharpie. Label what's in it. And I also label the top with a great big top, because you don't want to have this thing sitting on a table upside down and flip the things when you're not paying attention and opening it up and everything goes down onto the parking lot. That's not one of the scariest sounds out there. And we've all heard lots of, raccoons. Oh, they're horrible. But the absolute most frightening sound you'll ever hear is the sound of one of your favorite eyepieces hitting the ground. Yeah, just label it. And then I've got little arrows. Here's where the latches are. Okay, I need all the help I can get in making sure that that I know which way I'm opening things up. All right, so now we've taken care of the glass. You got a whole bunch of other gear. Well, there are lots of ways you can go with this, but one of my favorite places to go is the fishing department. This is a fishing tackle box. It's an Okeechobee Fats, Walmart, about $15. Yeah, it's squishy, which is nice because you can tuck it into places when you're transporting it and not have to worry about it. This is where you put your not breakable bits, and you would be amazed at how much one of these things holds. My pads, my thermocell, my atlas. I've got another book, a notebook, pair of glasses, another red light. You got outside pockets. I got my levels and compasses and other small doodads in here. And these things are great because they also come with two of these. And this is only like about $15. Okay, and in here, you put, in one of them at least, you put, oh, let's see, some straps for holding things down. When you get a telescope, it'll probably come with 1 or 2 or 5 Allen keys, okay? Save those Allen keys, okay? Here's my little Allen key collection. Kevin commented on Kevin's Allen key collection the other day. He's got a really nice box. Might come with a little screwdriver. You can see I've got 2, okay? Put them in there. Little pair of scissors. Black electrical tape, 1001 uses for that. Go to Harbor Freight, get you a couple of the little cheap Pittsburgh branded crescent wrenches, adjustable wrenches, because you will find that you have to tighten something up when you're out in the field. As time goes on, you'll learn what to put in your little toolkit. Okay, but a little toolkit like this, very, very useful. It's for the stuff that that's not breakable. Now, at some point, we'll probably have another presentation on fancy mounts, go-to mounts, and stuff like that. But you might have gotten yourself a go-to mount. Okay, get you another bag. Nice thing about these, they come in 2 colors. I wish they came in 3 colors because I've got 2 blue ones. Okay, label it. What's in it? Anything that's wires, batteries, goes in this bag, well labeled. Okay, so I've got 3 lithium-ion power banks in here that will run my telescopes. I've got my dew heater, dew materials in here. I've got 2 hand controllers in here. And yeah, you know, I don't always need a hand controller, but it's never a bad thing to have your hand controller with you, is it, Kevin? Because I have been known to, oh, that's a Skywatcher mount. Oh, I've got a hand controller you can use if you need one. And it works great, okay? Cables, and it all fits so nicely in one of these. Plus, you got that nice little plastic divided container where you put all the spare cables and connectors and whatnot, all in one place, all ready to go and protected. Okay, so now, where do you put all this stuff at home? One of these pictures is from a person who's been doing this for about 10 years. He is a botanist and a college professor. And the other picture is from somebody who's been doing this for a whole lot more than that. And he's a professional engineer. Can you tell whose is whose? Okay. This is Ralph's. This is mine. Okay. But having said that, a dedicated space where you put it. My garage door to the outside is right here. Okay. And it might look like a mess. It's a little hard to see with all the lights on in here. You can probably see it better online. It looks pretty higgledy-piggledy, but no, it is organized. It really is. Dedicated space and keep it there. You might have to make yourself do that, but keep it in that space. Okay. If you take it out and do something with it, put it back. Okay. Put it back. Organize it. Yeah, this is about as awesomely organized as you can get. Okay, here on the right, and my area on the left doesn't look very organized, but there are 5 telescopes on this rack, one of which is a 12-inch go-to Dobsonian, and they are all stored right here in my garage. There are 5 telescopes right there. Okay, but I know right where they are. There's my AZ GTI mount. There's my all-view mount. Behind that is the 6-inch Dob. There's my EQ equatorial mount, my 100mm refractor. Behind that is my ETX 125. This is where the tubes are for my truss tube Dobsonian, my solar scope, eyepieces, gear bags. This is all of the base for my Dobsonian. It happens to be one that comes apart, which is incredibly handy. Tables and whatnot. This is my observatory tarp that I put up. It's basically a canopy, a 10 by 10 canopy that I just took all of the stuff off the top, and I hang blackout curtains around it. Works great in my driveway. Everything's there. I know right where it is. And see, the thing is, when I get done in the evening or when I come back from a star party, it goes right out of my car and it goes boom, 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 right on the shelf. I know right where it goes. And it's easy. I can do it with my eyes closed. Okay. Checklists. You got a phone, there's probably an app for that. Okay. I have all kinds of checklists on here. When you go pack it up to go somewhere, check it off. When you bring it back in, check it back in. Okay. And that way you'll know, oh, wait a minute, I left my chair out at, well, don't worry. Somebody probably found it and we'll bring it to the next star party. Okay. Or pieces of chairs, as the case may be. Okay. Keep it all together, because the last thing you want is to end up at a nice dark sky site. Maybe you're by yourself. Maybe you're at a club event. You're 2 hours from home and you start going to set up and you left your battery on the kitchen table, or you left your eyepieces on the workbench, or you left your counterweight somewhere because they weren't all together. All right. You got to get from point A to point B. You got to put it in your car. Think about what's delicate and what's durable. Okay. What's in this bag? This can get bounced around. The microphone can't get bounced around though. What's in here doesn't need to be bounced around too much. Okay. And that kind of decides where things are going to go. Okay. Practice loading this in the day, because I guarantee you 5 hours later, when it's 20 degrees outside, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, you've been looking at stuff all evening, you are cold, you are tired, and kind of nice to have a plan, at least the basic outline of a plan of where things are going to go. But believe me, in those situations, it pretty much just gets put in there however you can get it in there. Think about driving physics. You drive the roads you drive on all the time, and you're thinking, oh yeah, I take that curve at 20 miles an hour every day. I know exactly how it goes. No, you don't. No, you don't. Physics has a field day with this stuff. And you will just be surprised at how stuff shifts, moves, things go fly. And you're like, what? How in the world? You got to think about that. Okay. Driving physics is way different when you're loaded up with expensive astronomy gear than when it's just you. This is my 12-inch Dob, the 6-inch Star Blast on the rings, my binocular setup, and everything to go to a thing in the Smokies. Okay, think about coming home. Think about what's this going to look like when you're tired. Okay, give that some thought. Take a picture of it so that to jog your memory. When you're done observing, we all do a little sweep. We kind of sweep our area with our red light, just checking it. Usually the last person or last couple of people there, and Ralph and I have done this many, many times, we will sweep the whole field. And then, okay, let's see, I think that's where David would set up. This might be his lens cap or something like that. David, you missing an eyepiece cover? Yeah. Okay, well, we found it. We got it. We'll get it back to you. Okay. Once again, checklist is your friend. Something that you probably don't think about, but you will at some point. Okay. When you're first starting, you're not going to be here yet, but I know of at least 2 people when they were purchasing a new vehicle for the test drive, they drove it home and put the gear in it, see how it was going to fit. Okay. I'm one of those. And I got the idea from Matt, who was the other one. Yeah, that's really, don't be afraid to do that. If they're letting you have a test drive, take it home and yeah, put stuff in it, load it up. How does this load? How does this look? Very, very useful thing. All right, so that brings us to the end. Or is it? Okay, so if anybody's got any questions about anything, I know most of you guys, this is old hat for you, but anybody on the live stream got any questions or anything, be happy to.
I have a question. Where's McKay's?
Okay. Star Party's coming up. So we got Friday, March 18 at Harrison Bay. And is that kind of a general member? Is that a members only, or is that?
Yeah, it's still
Anybody camping.
anybody camping
Yeah.
and BAS.
If you're camping and BAS, okay, but we won't be checking.
No, we won't be checking.
What is in that picture?
Let's see. Then the next one coming up will be the 27th here at UTC. That's everybody. Public is welcome. Then April 2nd, and that's at Cloudland Canyon. That is a nice kind of dark site until everybody's headlights are shot. But you can only do what you can do. If you want to use your scope, come early during the daylight, set up, ask for help setting up, and that'll be a really good time, and it's a good opportunity for some dark skies. Shouldn't be much moon in the sky for that one.
I was going to say, I think we had a couple questions.
Yeah.
One was, where can you find McKay's at?
The McKay, there's one in Nashville. I don't know where it is, but here in Chattanooga, it's off of Bonnie Oaks Road, just before Interstate 75. It's kind of like the end of Lee Highway and Bonnie Oaks, and you just kind of keep going straight, and it's kind of over by where the Harley Davidson thing is, and it's aisle 7B. Aisle 7B. Get there before Tom Adkins.
We also had a question of what is everything in that photo?
You'd have to talk to Ralph about that. This is not my collection. I can say that. I can say that for sure. Yeah, this is something that I pulled off the internet, but there are some interesting instruments there. I recognize these. I had a couple of these mounts in my garage when I was president years ago.